Just some details about the agreement and why we reached an in-principle agreement, so some contents within the agreement. For ambulance paramedics ALS, they'll get a wage increase of around about 7.5% in the first year. Obviously it's a 3-year agreement. It'll be 2.5% in the second year, 2.5% in the third year. For mobile intensive care paramedics, they will get a wage increase in the first year of around 10%. Likewise, 2.5, 2.5 in the second and third years. A lot of the allowances that are contained in the award, currently in the award and going into the enterprise agreement, will be increased, most of them by the 2.5% wage increases, but some other allowances have been increased by a greater margin, such as the on-call allowances have moved from $3.66 an hour to $5.50 an hour. The clinical instructors allowance was $2.50. It's now moved to $3.50 per hour. And I know that some sessional clinical instructors will think that that's nowhere near enough. I totally accept that. But that's the most that we could move the ambulance service on that allowance. The AV only wanted to increase that allowance by 2.5%, which would have meant a 6 cents increase per hour. We managed to move them by $1. I know it might not sound a lot, but that's the context that you've got to put that in. What they are creating is more appointed CI positions at all branches. So it doesn't mean now that anyone that wants to take on an appointed CI's position that they have to move their branch to do so. So hopefully there'll be a minimum of 2 appointed CIs at each branch. And that's within the metropolitan region. They haven't indicated what they would do within the rural region at this stage in regard to appointments of CIs. There's a new classification being created for those positions called paramedic educators, and that will cover people that are in appointed CI positions and also the people that are in the clinical specialist roles within rural Victoria, and they will be paid the same rate of pay. Some of the other increases or benefits were, obviously we've achieved the 10-hour rest break. It will take 2 years to phase that in, but in the interim, anyone that highlights to the service that they're fatigued when they're going on to a rest break, then the service will allow them to extend their current 8-hour rest break to 10 hours. And we're not suggesting that you wake up at the 8-hour mark and ring them up and say you need an additional 2 hours. What we're saying is that if you are fatigued, you inform through the op centres that you're fatigued and that you'll need to have an extension of your rest break. So there's some of the things that are of the benefits. Salary sacrifice into the defined benefits, that will apply to eligible employees. Any employee that's currently in defined benefits or contributes to the defined benefits of ESSS will be allowed to salary sacrifice now into the defined benefits. And that'll be a tax saving of around $25 a week for those members that are in defined benefits. Some other benefits are for the clerical and administration staff. There are some banning of their rates of classifications and rates of pay and some progression processes through those bands. So what that means, within 6 months of the agreement being reached and ratified, that depending on where people sit within their classification bands, there is a possibility that they will get a 5% increase in regard to their wages if they're sitting at the lowest point in the band, and then that happens again within the 18-month mark of the start of the agreement. For the relievers' meals, that's been significantly increased from $43 a day to $72 a day, and that applies to not only operational staff, but even if, say, fleet maintenance officers and that go away to go and work at another workshop and they're required to live away from home. Living away from home allowance obviously has increased only by the 2.5%, so there's been a slight increase there.
Steve, we've also had a significant change to crib meal breaks, which will help us achieve meals. Can you explain how that works?
Yeah, the new provision for crib meal breaks are that the windows of opportunity, as you'd be aware, if you haven't had a meal break and you go past the window of opportunity, you're entitled to claim late meal allowances. That still continues moving forward. But also, what AV have agreed to, that within that first hour past the window of opportunity, they will only respond you to code 1s and priority 0s. Now, I know that in rural, they may not use the terminology priority 0s, but that's the imminent cardiac arrest and things like that. At the end of that first hour after the window of opportunity, they can only respond you to priority 0s. Right? You must be directed to complete a crib meal break, and the only jobs that you can be directed to, as I say, at the end of that hour, past the window of opportunity, is a priority 0 case. So that's obviously strengthening up the crib meal break provisions to allow crews to get meal breaks. The other thing is that on night shifts or shifts greater than 10 hours that go through the night, and you get 2 meal breaks, 2 windows of opportunity. We've had issues in the past where some crews, some paramedics, have not been able to even achieve a meal break on night shifts. You can now claim for the 2 sets of allowances concurrently if you haven't had a meal break that goes past the second window of opportunity. So you can get 2 sets of allowances and you can claim them together as long as up until the stage that you get your first meal break.
With the 10-hour break, a lot of country people, RAB people are asking if they have to ask for the extra 2 hours, how is that any different to asking for a fatigue break now?
Well, I suppose to some degree it's no different. The issue is, though, that they inform all employees that are fatigued should inform the ops centre person or the manager that they have to report to inform them that they are fatigued and they're seeking an extension of the 8-hour break. Even currently, when rural people take a fatigue break, it might only still be 8 hours currently. Under the new provisions, they have a right to have it extended by 2 hours to make it a 10-hour fatigue break. I know there's been circumstances in rural Victoria previously that sometimes they've even taken longer than 10 hours. Well, we're not suggesting that that practice will change, right? That may be by the negotiation with the manager, but this particular provision now allows for 10-hour rest breaks for people that have indicated to the employer that they're fatigued. Just to explain the rolled-in rate and the differences of increases between rural and metropolitan Melbourne, when you get the rolled-in rate figures, people that work in rural will notice that they're getting a higher increase because of their current rolled-in rate is a lot lesser than the metro rolled-in rate. So a paramedic in rural Victoria will get about $104 a week increase compared to the paramedic in metropolitan Melbourne only getting $71 a week increase. Metro paramedics have had larger rolled-in rate figures for years because of the rural rosters not providing as many shift penalties as what the metropolitan rosters have. Some of the other benefits are obviously an increase in the paid maternity leave from 8 weeks to 10 weeks. That's also going to be phased in over the first 2 years, so it goes from 8 weeks to 9 weeks in the first year and then 9 to 10 weeks in the second year.